I work for the NOAA. Mermaids Are Real. Hello. I am posting this for an acquaintance that does not meet the Reddit requirements for posting in the sub herself. This is not my information, nor am I in any way related to the situation or any actions taken by her. Everything italics beyond this point is verbatim her story, as provided to me. She will also have control of my account for a bit to answer questions. The Navy has worked in conjunction with the government to keep this quiet on all fronts. Other governments have similar systems in place to keep this information strictly in the realm of fiction, according to public perception. I am compelled to break my silence and disseminate this information. My colleagues and the organization I've called home for the past 12 years is responsible for keeping one of the greatest genealogical discoveries of all time quiet. The sector I work in is being restructured and downsized, so I am going to lose my job in May. This post should expedite that process. Here is my identifying information, my name, my email, my contact information. I began my career with the SRA, Southeast Regional Aquaculture Office, located in St. Pete in 2008. I hold an MS in Biological Sciences from FIT and a PhD in Wildlife and Fishery Sciences from TAMU. In 2012, there was an incident of a few beach whales that were investigated by NOAA and a team from the Navy. This was very thoroughly hushed up immediately afterwards. The whales were full of perfectly circular incisions where large chunks of their flesh has been removed, like cylinders of meat essentially. At first, we thought this had been done after the beaching, but we learned that they washed up that way. What really caught everyone's attention was the seared flesh around the circumference of the incisions, as if they were burned out with lasers. We were all baffled, as we had never seen anything like this on marine life. Then, we got a call informing us that a small team would be conducting a hydrographic survey of the area using the echo sounder of a local vessel. We typically use a technique called multi-beam sonar to scan/map the sea floor in astounding detail. The datum we collect is processed by various parties and is usually uploaded online to online databases. We were told that this would not be the case for this specific expedition. We were told that a serious exception was being made for this one. Long story short, we found irrefutable evidence of an advanced humanoid species living underneath our oceans. Using the multi-beam sonar, we found their dwelling areas and also what appear to be underwater vehicles of some kind. The creatures themselves were tracked by the Navy over the course of 2 weeks, using a submersible equipped with special deep-sea observation equipment. The creatures displayed speeds of 70+ knots, faster than the sailfish, which is widely considered to be one of the fastest creatures in the ocean, if not the fastest by far. They were also recorded emitting sounds that resemble marine communications, and instruments also captured the emissions of precision sonar blasts that damaged the hull of the submersible, according to the Navy report. There is footage of the creatures, including juveniles. The Navy did not share the video with us, but an officer I spoke with gave the following description to me. What I am writing down here is every single detail he told me, no detail spared. They did not look real. They looked like a computer animation or something. They have a glow around their entire body, and they move really fast, like even small movements like turning their head or moving an arm was like watching a high frame rate video. They look nothing like any fictional depiction out there. They do not have a fishtail. They are completely humanoid, but extremely thin/tall. Their bodies were covered in a material resembling elemental mercury that looked like it was moving. They were very interested in the submersible and seemed to know that they were being observed, as a few times they would swim off and come back with more creatures. We observed at maximum 5 of them at once, varying sizes, but otherwise identical in appearance. Their eyes were completely white, and there was no visible hair, nor any features that implied male or female. No visible ears, and the mouths were wide and lipless. We flashed sequences of lights at them, sounds, and even extended a robotic arm on the submersible to try and get some kind of physical sample / DNA from the specimens or in the water nearest to them. We don't know how they were swimming, as they were not wading or moving their bodies the way a fish or even a human would need to underwater. They were capable of just moving rapidly in any direction without the need to change positions or swim. In fact, during the majority of the observations, they were just floating motionless without losing or gaining buoyancy. Now, there were also craft observed via sonar, some very large. They would move faster than anything should be capable of moving underwater. They were not seen or recorded on video, just on sonar. They would at times disappear completely while being observed, as if they left the water or cloaked themselves. We have 2 weeks worth of data on just this one area. We were made aware that this is one of many spots around the world where these creatures reside, hidden from view. A briefing that I was able to read during a meeting indicated that Mariana's Trench is where the largest concentration of these creatures reside, and they seem to be completely unaffected by the depths. Structures believed to be their dwelling units have been mapped. They are perfectly hexagonal and joined together like a honeycomb. Their composition is unknown. The Navy confiscated most of the hard evidence. All we have are some sonar readings that are only anomalous if you know what you are looking for. I want everyone to know this information. We are not alone, but they aren't from power space. In order to exist at these depths and under astronomical pressures, these beings are either invincible or they have evolved so far beyond us that they have some kind of technology that negates both of those dangers. This is actively being covered up by every lettered organization and by our military. Other nations are aware of these beings, and I believe some authentic videos may even be mingled in all of the doctored stuff. The sightings in Kiryat Yam were authentic. We mapped a collection of their dwellings off the coast, near Cypress Island. This happened pretty recently. I live in a pretty nice suburb, next to an elementary school. Me and 3 other friends, I'll call them Anthony, Johnny, and Kevin for online purposes, skate all around the city, even make a day of going out of the city to the next one. Mind you, I live in North Texas. Not too far from my house is a small forest. Not too big, maybe a square mile in total. There is some old trails along the outside that you can walk along, but nobody really goes further into it. So, that is the backstory about the area. Me and my 3 other friends always liked poking around the dark, spooky areas. In the summers, we would go into the sewers and walk them for hours, etc. We were pretty adventurous. One day, about mid-November, Kevin told me he was on Google Maps looking for someone's house, unrelated, and said he saw a clearing in the woods and a roof to something. Anthony lives the closest to the woods, so me and Kevin went to go get him since we were going to the woods anyway. Johnny and Anthony hang out a lot, so Johnny was already at Anthony's house. From Anthony's house, it's about a 5-minute walk to the woods. Anthony grabbed an empty backpack and put 2 flashlights, a big paint knife, and his homemade shiv, that's what he called it. It was essentially a sharp piece of metal wrapped in masking tape. I will add that you can slide a paint knife into the cracks of doors and jimmy them open. After the 5-minute walk to the edge of the woods, it was about 10 minutes finding the houses. We got to the clearing after about 10 minutes and a little bit of arguing. It was really run down. There was an old car there. It looked like it was from the 60s. But anyway, the front of the house was facing the opposite of where the suburb was. Kinda weird, but whatever. The back door was barely hanging on its hinges, so Kevin just gave it a weak kick. sending dust and bits of wood everywhere. It was 3 o'clock, so the sun was still giving off some light to the area. We split into pairs. Me and Johnny went upstairs. The stairs were cracked and broken, so we went one at a time to make sure nothing broke. Upstairs were 2 rooms, a girl's bedroom, but no bed. I guess whoever moved out took everything, and then the bedroom led to an empty room, pretty much bare. After looking around upstairs and taking a few pictures with my phone, iPhone 4, me and Johnny went back downstairs to see what Kevin and Anthony were doing. They were taking pictures of a pretty empty kitchen. Just some counters were there, and an old oven. They said they were only at the kitchen and wanted to wait on us to check out the rest of the house. The living room was bare, no couches, coffee tables remained, just an old fireplace, pic related, it's the fireplace, and loose planks on the ground. There were 2 other rooms. The one, I'm sure it was a dining room. There were some old, cracked plates on the ground, and a few broken chairs. No table though. The other was a bathroom, just a toilet. I did not notice a shower or bathtub in the house, upstairs or downstairs. The toilet still had water in it, really stagnant, and it smelled like really old shit. I remember it being me, Kevin, and Johnny checking out the bathroom. Anthony shouted to, "Come here, I found some shit." Anthony said he dropped his phone taking a picture, and when he picked it up, he saw, like a trap door or something. Him and Kevin cleared the planks and, holy shit, it was a trap door. Picture related, it's the trap door. It took a few minutes trying to get it open. By then, the sun was already starting to set. We were too excited about the trap door to worry about going home. Finally, Johnny got the door open. It sent a whole bunch of dust everywhere. Anthony pulled out one of the flashlights and got a look down. There was a ladder leading down into a concrete basement. I went first with the other flashlight. I set it down, and everyone else filed down the ladder. Holy shit, the basement smelled awful. I've only smelled dead animals before, but I know this was not the smell of a dead animal. It had to be a person. There was a black, oily kind of goo on the ground, and, I think, candle wax. After everyone piled down, Anthony saw something shiny behind a table. Now, the table, picture, freaked everyone out. It was blood. We all knew it. Anthony picked up a small necklace. I never saw anything shiny, but I guess I was not at the right angle. The necklace was really weird. It was a pentagram with an eye in it. Anthony lost it in his room, so I can't get a picture from it. The sun was setting, and it got pretty dark. We all got out of the basement and left. We exited out of the front door and started making our way around back to leave. I saw it first, a small figure in the light of the setting sun. It was really tall, at least a foot taller than Anthony. He was about 6'2". I whispered for everyone to look and be quiet. I guess he/she/it saw us too, and then screamed. It was like someone growling in G major. We have all tried making that noise, but we could not come close. We all ran to Anthony's house and went our separate ways after that. I had a stalker once, in an apartment which had 4 exits, one of which I had no access to. Old building, crappy maintenance, landlord who wasn't up to code and was not around, etc. Some creep used to stand outside one of my doors late at night and run off when I would go to the door. Did I mention the shitty building with paper thin walls? Landlord did not care, and I assumed it was a drug addict or something. Eventually, I woke up at night, thought a rodent was at one of the exit doors to the downstairs area, but as I got closer, I realized someone was unscrewing the screws to the doorknob. I watched 2 screws drop to the floor, the entire doorknob fall off. It was shoddy as shit, and instinctively, I chose fight instead of flight, so I slammed my hand against the door as hard as I could while bending over, and stared into the hole where the doorknob was, where another eye met mine. I called the police. They did not find anyone as usual, could not really do anything. Time goes by, and I am scared shitless. Time went by, and I could not shake the feeling that this person was more than just an attempted burglar. I eventually decided to really grill the maintenance guy, who, because he was the only one with keys to my apartment, even though he brushed me off before. He was a mentally ill guy who always weirded me out and said inappropriate stuff, so I asked him a ton of questions and finally get around to really pressing him and demanding he tell me if he's ever seen anyone trying to get into my apartment. That's when he said, "What, your girlfriend?" I freaked out. I have no girlfriend. I had a flood of thoughts and suspicions, starting with suspecting this guy. I initially had a rush of thoughts, like if this guy was the person doing this, or what the fuck he was talking about. Convo passed, and I almost hysterically questioned him, and he got around to realizing I had no idea what he was talking about. That's when he said he thought the crazy woman in one of the apartments was my girlfriend, and he had been letting her into my apartment for a long time when I was away. My body went cold. Every time I found hair that I did not think could have been me or anyone I had over in my bathroom, every time I thought food was missing, every time I thought things were moved a little, I ignored it all, but it was her. This batshit crazy woman who I thought was a shut-in was telling people in the complex that I was her boyfriend, about fights we supposedly had, and all sorts of shit. The stuff I was hearing outside my doors at night was her, and she was inside my apartment whenever I would leave. I called the police and left. Had to deal with a scumbag landlord, mentally ill maintenance guy, and the cops, with no results except for getting out of my lease. She stalked me for a year. She had details of an ongoing relationship for an entire year that she told of her tenants. She shared all my private spaces by lying to the stupid maintenance guy, and that night, she was removing the doorknob. I think she was going to hurt me. I'm not going to CSI answer questions on this. This was real. It's not paranormal. It gets worse than I've typed, but I don't want to go through all of that shit before I realized I had a stalker. And now that I've posted this, I am done, because this shit horrifies me to this day, and this is my limit for thinking about it. Not me, but this happened to my dad a while before I was born. Come to think of it, it is a pretty run-of-the-mill spooky story, but for me, it's particularly concerning as my dad is a real no-nonsense kind of guy. Dad is a builder/joiner. Job required him to work out of town and stay in hotel, which is where he was working. Hotel used to be a post-World War II hospital or some shit. I know, right? Anyway, the hotel was currently renovating the previously unused top floor, and only some rooms were finished. The hotel told him he could stay there half of charge while working there in one of the finished rooms on the top floor, that is. For some reason, the hotel had shared bathrooms in the hall rather than in rooms. That's rural England for you. Anyway, fast forward to nighttime. He wakes up late at night to go to the toilet. He walks down the corridor to the only bathroom that had been finished and sees that it is occupied, which is perfectly reasonable as there were about 4 or 5 other finished rooms on the floor, so it was likely one of the other residents. He returns to his room and waits a while and goes back, still occupied. Waits a bit longer. As he goes back, an elderly woman in a nightgown exits the bathroom. He jokingly says something to her like, "I was worried you fell asleep in there." She completely ignores him, probably hard of hearing, and walks back and enters her room. Dad finally gets to use the toilet. Hooray. As he leaves the bathroom, he sees the woman again. This time, she is stood in the middle of the corridor, staring blankly a fair distance from him. He says goodnight to her out of politeness, despite being quite weirded out. Come morning, he tells the person on reception about the woman just to make them aware in case she hurt herself in the night or anything. Receptionist looks at him puzzled, almost angry, and thanks him for informing them, but there are no other current residents on that floor, and that it was likely someone from another floor. My dad then tells the staff member that he saw the woman enter one of the rooms. At this point, the receptionist sighs and tells him that they frequently have complaints and messages about an elderly woman acting off particularly off previous builders who were in the same situation as my dad and staying on the top floor, which explained why he was doing a job that was already half done. Anyway, they offered him a full refund as long as he did not mention it to other current guests. My dad stayed there until the job was finished. He even said he saw the woman again, briefly, in a similar place on one of the last nights. Despite this, to this day, he is still skeptical of ghosts and the supernatural, which I honestly don't understand. Got some fresh OC for you guys, hot and fresh out the kitchen. Some backstory. I work in a pub in the UK. I work 2 late nights every week. I just got back home from my second of the week. The pub is only 35 years old, but the building used to be a farm before that, and nobody knows how long it's been there. So, cut to 3 AM when I was closing up the pub with the night manager. Walking downstairs after checking store and bottle cage were locked. About to go to residence bar, as that's open past 3 AM. Quickly shout to night manager if he wants anything else doing before I go through. He says yeah, just hold on a sec. He comes back from chaining the fire exit. We had a break-in 10 days ago through it. I say what's up. Anon, can you just wait here a second? Sure, but why? This place scares the shit out of me late at night. I hate being here alone. Bear in mind, this is a guy I've seen chase down 3 6-foot-tall drunks and pin 2 down on his own. Okay, but why? Well, I have never seen it, but apparently there's a ghost here. Oh, really? Like what? From the fire? Pub burnt down twice in the past 30 years. 4 people died the first time. No, I don't think so. Apparently it's a farmer. He's followed some people around. At this point I'm just like, okay, people here are idiots, and the pub is kinda creepy when we turn all the lights off. We walk through to the back, and I tell him I'm not the best person to have with him if he is scared of ghosts. I tend to attract them. I've had friends never see one in their lives, and see one with me multiple times in different locations. Get to the main power switches, and we flick them off, then head back inside. As we are walking under the stairs, imagine a corridor cut in 2 with stairs on one side, then the upper hallways going perpendicular. I see something out of the corner of my eye upstairs, think nothing of it. We walk through the pub and check all of the dishwashers are off, etc., and make our way to the residence bar, where I'll be the only one serving, and he will be doing the glasses and other nighttime shit jobs. I realized I've left both my jacket and my tips in the main pub, so go back in. As I get to the bar, I feel something staring at me, which I've never felt there before. I get the stuff I need and take a look around the bar when I notice what looks like an old-ass farmer carrying a pitchfork or something similar at the end of the bar, propping it up like a customer. I'm accustomed to ghosts after living in a couple of haunted places previously, so just get on my way. As I turn to leave, I notice so does the farmer. He walks right behind me down the length of the bar, through the kitchens, and up to the door leading to the residence bar. I did not see him, but felt his presence / stare on me. I reach out for the door handle and take a look back, and I shit you not, this motherfucker was 6 inches from my face, mean mugging me. Needless to say, I yanked the door open and got the fuck out of Dodge and went outside for a cigarette. Never told the night manager. Don't know what to do, as we are both on late shift again tomorrow. I don't think the farmer was malevolent in any way. If I was some dead farmer, I'd wonder why the fuck some kid was wandering around my old farmhouse at 3 in the morning, taking clothes and money out with him. Kinda want to see Farmer Bro again to ascertain if he's a spoopy ghost or chill. Don't want the night manager to see him, as it will be a bad experience for both of them. In 1965, I had just bought my first car, and I took my wife and 2 daughters out into the country for a ride and a picnic. Not far from here is a ruined castle and church, and in part of the church lies the body of a crusader. My daughters wanted to see his tomb, and I lifted them up so that they could look inside for a grill in the door. Suddenly, my wife gave a shout, and I turned around. There was a gentleman standing there behind us. None of us had heard him approaching, even though the path we were on and the surrounding area was covered in deep gravel. He looked visibly shaken and was crying. I asked him what was the matter. He asked us to follow him through the churchyard, which we did. Then he asked us to go and read the inscription on a tombstone and return, and tell him what the inscription said. The inscription read, "Here lies the body of Harold James Bell of Siloff, Cumberland, born 21st of June, 1815, died 21st of June, 1865, aged 50 years old." I read this aloud, and the stranger completely broke down. After a short while, he gathered himself and said, "I am Harold James Bell of Siloff, Cumberland, and I was born in 21st of June, 1915. Today is my 50th birthday." That day, by coincidence, was the 21st of June, 1965. So indeed, if the man was telling the truth, it was his birthday. He went on to say that he was a sales rep for a Cumberland company and had been tasked with traveling into the area work on that day. However, 5 miles from here, something unexplainable happened. As he was driving, some unknown force took control of the car and forced it off the main roads through a narrow country lane to this place. Then the car stopped, and he had been pushed and shoved by something invisible through the churchyard until he came to the tombstone. We thought this was a very strange story, and I wondered what it could mean. The stranger, however, was convinced that the event was a way of showing him that he had come to the end of his natural life and that he would soon die. We could not convince him otherwise. My wife was really upset over the affair, and I decided we would leave. I escorted Mr. Bell back to his car and left. Next Monday, I told the story to my manager at work, and a week later, he came to me with a laugh and complimented me on telling such a good story. He and his wife, walking in the area, decided to go and see the tombstone and could not find it. I found this amazing because I did not think it could be missed. So that evening, after work, I returned to the graveyard, and sure enough, there was no gravestone, nor sign that it ever existed. My wife and I have revisited that site many times out of curiosity. I always wonder what became of the unhappy Mr. Bell. Did he even really exist? Our conversation, the atmosphere, and the unreality of it all, it made this the strangest happening in all my life. In the early hours of the morning, Katie had seen a UFO in the sky while she was driving home from the diner she worked at. It was ball-shaped, about 20 feet in diameter, and bright pink in color. Katie was amazed by the sight and slowed down her car on the largely empty road. It was seen for barely 10 or 15 seconds, but that was enough for Katie to know what she saw, a UFO. She drove home, somewhat shaky and excited, went to bed, and that was it. At least, it was until the next morning. There was a knock on the door around 9:45 a.m. It jolted Katie from her sleep, as she had not gotten home until around 2:30 a.m. Katie opened the door to the sight of nothing less than a man in black. We're talking about the type of MIB that John Keel wrote about in largely the 1960s and the 1970s. The creepy-looking, scrawny, pale MIBs that have zero to do with the government. They are way weirder than that. Like so many people who see the MIB, Katie opened the door and immediately let the MIB in, something that she would never do under normal circumstances. Here is where things get strange. Katie can only remember certain aspects of the grilling that the MIB gave her. She can remember inviting the men in black into her duplex, but she cannot remember how he left. She knows she was threatened by the black-garbed thing, but can't recall what the threat actually was. And when the MIB left, and Katie's mind started coming back to normal, she saw 2 of her coffee mugs on the living room table, but she had zero recall of making the coffee.